Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Elizabeth, Executive Director of the International School of the Voice, and today is episode 5 of The Art of the Craft of the Art. Welcome. Today's discussion is devoted to vowels, vocalizing, vowelizing. This is, in my opinion, a touchy subject with a lot of teachers. I find that it is typically taught from the aspect of how the vowel sounds. Consonants will be done at another point, don't worry. But I find that it's typically taught from the perspective of how the vowel sounds, rather than perhaps the shape of the instrument itself, which of course includes the tongue when we're talking about language. But shape is everything because it will determine the instrument's physical dynamics, and that will therefore determine the shape of the space in which the sound waves are oscillating, reverberating, right? And that's what equals the sound, the overall resonance and character of your particular instrument, and the ability to do any of the commands that are on the score, the page. Plus the ability to be expressive and artful on top of that line, right? To go beyond that veil and be a real artist with the instrument. That's amazing. And that's the entire passion of my whole life. As nerdy as that may be, that's what I love to do, and I love to talk about it. So here we are. It's really, really important to note that before you have language and you're born, every single baby around the world cries the same way, with the same open throat, that same sound. Once we begin to learn language, we have a concept of what it sounds like for us and how we produce it. And additionally, that can be altered by anatomical abnormalities and or neurological abnormalities. So regional accents, all of these things come into play. So when you are studying with someone and they begin to vocalize, vocalizing, in my opinion, is not just about warming up the voice. Vocalizing is intended to teach you how to apply the technique to the sound making. And in the process, you will warm up the voice. But we don't really warm up in my studio. We inhale, we talk about technique, and then we do exercises that focus on technique. And in that process, you become mentally and physically prepared for more demanding vocal work. I digress. It's really important to note that that teacher or guide or mentor or coach, whatever it may be, and even you may have a particular concept of what a, e, o, u is. And we start with the Italian vowels because it's an Italian form. I mean, just briefly going back, the history of vocal pedagogy, as far as we know, as far as I know, I'm not like, a musicologist, but Alypius and Pythagoras in Greece were studying the not just the voice, but observing and making written observations on how to produce a particular type of clear sound in theater and in music. And then it wasn't until like later mid to late 17th century, we have Giulio Caccini, super important name in vocal music. He also developed a system, and that's about the time bel canto technique was born. And it wasn't until later into the 19th century that we started to get much more precise writings about the anatomical theory combined with the theoretical concepts of singing and combining those two things into applicable sound. And I think the most famous name for that would most certainly be Manuel Garcia, right, in España. But anyway, back to vowels. A, E, I, O, U. Perhaps, depending on where you come from, those things are very different types of vocal productions. They can be O, I, O, right? Or A, E, O, U. I mean, there's any number of different types of sounds. So when you guide someone in their vowelizing, I'm going to call it vowelizing, not vocalizing, you want to be aware of that there is going to be that element for both of you. So I have a rather what I think is controversial, thought about how you do it. And I find it to be always effective. But it does take a lot of trust for the young person because my perspective on it is unique. But I teach it from the vowels are E, A, O, and U, meaning the tongue and the oropharynx, let's just stick with that, we're going to keep it simple, are what are mostly involved in forming those 5 vowels. And the ones in between, of course, all the various variations on those sounds. However, we want to, as we get to E, A, A, we want to make sure that we are keeping the tongue from depressing. Why would we want that? Well, in the previous episodes, I spoke about how we don't want to engage this hyoid business. We don't want to engage this muscle. That doesn't mean the face doesn't open. This is a really challenging thing to teach, especially to someone who's had many voice lessons and from another perspective for a long time. But you can open the jaw, but you need to do what's called a laryngeal stretch, which means this muscle is free. Okay, I'll get into that in a little bit. But E, A, A, and then O and U subsequently would mean that the oropharynx or the back of the mouth needs to stretch. It's what happens when you yawn. It's a completely organic type of motion for your body to do, and it does it every day. You're just not aware of it. But to be able to do it on command, right, to make it be on manual, so to speak, as opposed to automatic, involuntary, is the challenge of the work that we do. And you have to be proprioceptively really astute and have masterful guidance in order to make that happen. So for example, I will demonstrate first this way and then this orientation. Okay, this is the orientation in this direction, this up and downy business that uses these muscles. Listen to the difference. I'll do it again. Do you hear the air in my chords? Listen. Do you hear that like slight air escaping? That's because this is depressing onto the chords and it's actually making like a baby paralyzation. And so the abductor muscles are keeping the chords just a little bit apart. It's not ideal, I promise. As opposed to E-O. As opposed to this orientation, we want to do this orientation, which is interesting because the vocal tract moves in this direction, right? The opening of the pharynx moves in this direction. The oropharynx, or back of the mouth, moves in that direction. So it's a trinity of parallel motions. It would seem logical, but perhaps to some it's not. I digress again. But E, A, O, U, you want to learn to make the vowel sounds without using these muscles to do so. And additionally, not allowing the tongue to depress onto the epiglottis, which closes, which is a feature combined with this that is designed to close the vocal tract, right? It's a swallowing feature. It's designed to keep you alive. So you want the stretch. It looks almost the same. Look at it without sound. This is the one with hyoid muscle. This is the one without the hyoid muscle. So you can see how if you're watching a singer, especially great singers, you know their mouths are open all the time, but how it could be confusing to someone who doesn't know the difference. Well, you need to open your mouth. You need to open your mouth. Well, careful. You need to open the vocal tract, and you need to stretch the oropharynx. You need to do a laryngeal stretch. You're talking about vocal stretching, not anything that's teeth forward is not really involved. I call this language forward, is not involved in the stretch. So I will often say in the studio, language and singing are not the same thing as far as technique is concerned. In regards to making artful types of singing with language, no, they definitely you do work with it in this way. This is fancy. This is more craft of the art business rather than art of the craft part. And I can't wait till we can talk about that. I'm going to bring all the peeps on from all different types of vocal life, not just singers is what I'm saying, to talk about this. And many episodes will be devoted to the art making of singing. I just cannot wait till that happens. But I feel like we really need to set up this base before we get there. And I appreciate you for hanging with me on it. So to come back to vowels, again, they're oriented here. It's involved in stretching the oropharynx. Okay? And why is this better than the other method? Like I said before, this method closes the throat. The one you need to be open, yeah, that one. It closes it. No good. Okay? That's number one. Number two, the entire point, and this is really part of number one, but the entire point is to keep the larynx, pharynx, right? Oropharynx in an organic, liberated, open space, right? So if you are doing motions, and that would include apodal work, but we've talked about that, remember? So if you want to get there and talk about how to keep the larynx open, go back and listen to those episodes about apodal or air pressure management. But if that's the goal, is to keep this open. So if you have a vocalizing, a vowelizing system that contradicts that, no worky. So think about it. I hope people have strong opinions about this. In time, I would love to demonstrate more, but I really think leaving these technical videos shorter, sweeter, is easier to digest. And I welcome your conversation in any direction. Like and subscribe, as the kids say. Please put all the comments you like. Ask questions. You're welcome to disagree with me or agree. I love discourse. Keep it kind. Keep it, above the belt, as they say, if you can. But please ask questions, and comment all you like. So more on this later, but I really just wanted to make a short video about what vowelizing is, what it's for, how you do it. And similarly, when we talk about consonants, which I'm not sure I'll devote an entire episode to, I haven't really thought about it. If you think I should, maybe put it in the comments. But I'd like to talk about consonants in regards to fiato and legato. That's where I'd like to really talk about it. I call it infilare il fiato, like threading, like sewing. That concept of sewing the sound. Once you've got the air pressure managed, and then what do you do once you're phonating and threading, so to speak, the sound. I have super specific thoughts about that, but I'd rather do the consonant work in that regard. Wow, I just had a thought of a guest who would be great to include in that. But yes, thank you for being with me today. And I hope to hear from you in the comment sections, or you can absolutely send an email, internationalschoolofthevoice@gmail.com. Bye, everyone.